South Africa, the Rainbow Nation, but is one of its largest minorities being marginalised. Many Afrikaners believe their culture and language are under threat.
It's almost like you're always walking around with a target on your back.
Protests are leading to their mother tongue, Afrikaans, being dropped by the country's universities. Afrikaners, the people who ran South Africa during the brutal apartheid era, now say the rules are rigged against them.
People don't like giving up power. You know, white people don't like giving up power. Who wants to give up power?
In a nation grappling with high crime and soaring unemployment, are Afrikaners being sidelined? And could, as some believe, their very survival be in doubt?
You're going to have a situation where races turn on each other. That's going to flow out of instability.
I've come to South Africa to find out how a white minority, which once ruled the roost, now fears for its future. I've come to South Africa's wine country. The vineyards that line the hills around the town of Stellenbosch are some of the country's finest. But it's not the wine that I'm here for. Stellenbosch is at the centre of a controversy that really goes to the heart of what it means to be South African, and more specifically, a white South African. Stellenbosch University is one of the best in the whole of Africa, but it also has a reputation as a bastion of white privilege. Its graduates include numerous prime ministers from the apartheid era, when a white minority ruled the country, enforcing a system of racial segregation that only ended 22 years ago. The university is more diverse now, but in a country that's 90% black or mixed race, 2/3 of its students are white. It's a picture many think is reinforced by classes here being taught in Afrikaans, the mother tongue of most of South Africa's white minority. Hey Bernard, nice to meet you. I'm Ben.
You know, good and self. Nice to see you.
What's the plan?
Well, at the moment the plan is to go to the police station.
Bernard Peters is running for student president. He's a member of the Afrikaner rights pressure group, AfriForum. They're challenging the university's decision to scale back teaching in Afrikaans in favour of English. Why does retaining the language matter so much to you?
Well, we've got a couple of examples in South Africa where people have been told they are not allowed to speak their mother tongue, their language, and their culture in a way also faded away. It has happened before, and every time it's ended the same way. You could almost use the word ethnic cleansing, that everyone's just been made the same.
Today, Bernard has come to the police station to start legal proceedings against the university. He wants to overturn their decision to reduce the number of classes taught in Afrikaans. Give me an idea of what it's like to be white and Afrikaans at the moment in South Africa.
Well, it's almost like you're always walking around with a target on your back. Everything's your fault, everything gets blamed on you, excluded from work, jobs, bursaries. For every 8 black workers, you are supposed to have 2 coloured workers, 2 white workers and 1 Indian worker. That's a racial makeup that is enforced by law.
I mean, I suppose because the starting point was so bad in the sense of the black community really did not have any advantages to begin with as a consequence of apartheid. Was something that dramatic not necessary to essentially fix the problem, to get more black people into work?
At the moment, the way the government is treating it is totally flawed. They're treating symptoms, not the problem.
South Africa's students have held noisy and sometimes violent protests over the past 12 months. Demonstrations over university fees, colonial-era statues, and the use of Afrikaans in the classroom have fused together. In response to accusations that teaching in Afrikaans effectively excludes non-white students, universities, including Stellenbosch, have promised to scale back or even phase out teaching in the language. So this is an Afrikaans bookshop?
Yeah, it's basically the textbook store that's mostly in Afrikaans.
Simone Cupido is mixed race. Like many so-called coloured South Africans, she does speak a dialect of Afrikaans, but not the same variant of the language spoken by white students. She is among those campaigning for classes to be taught in English.
If I did economics, I would need this textbook.
Which is all in Afrikaans.
Which is mostly, yes, all in Afrikaans. So we have translators in our class, and they have got these little mics. We call them the ghost whisperers because they whisper everything that the lecturer is saying.
Throughout the entire class?
Throughout the entire class in English. And usually what happens is that the translator gets things mixed up because she's not maybe well versed in economic language, and then we always get stuck in the middle.
So it is actually literally you sitting there looking at a lecturer who's speaking one language, and then in your ear is a lady saying, on page 44 it says that you should be doing that.
Yeah. I'm getting my education through a third party, not through the lecturer itself, yeah.
To critics, these teaching arrangements aren't just messy. They're a sign that some of the country's universities are still prioritising the needs of white students.
A key question is that in South Africa, a country that is 80% black, a university is 70% white. So, there's something wrong with that. Usually your institution should reflect kind of the demographics of your country. And you not give them some credit in terms of that they're trying to save their culture? I think the method in which they're doing it is extremely exclusionary. I'm an Afrikaans speaker, but are you preserving my Afrikaans language? I don't think so. You're not preserving my culture, you're not preserving my mom's culture, you're preserving Afrikaans culture as it was during Apartheid. I'm at a student residency to meet up with Bernard again. For the first time, he's facing voters to answer questions about his bid to be president. Bernard's audience is all male, mostly white, and largely Afrikaans speaking.
Goeienaand, ek is Bernard Pieters. Ek is een van die 8 Afriforum kandidaten wat staan vir SR kandidaatskap vanjaar. I'm Bernard Pieters. I'm one of the candidates standing for SRC this year. We are just here to introduce ourselves, let you get to know us, and to ask any questions afterwards.
I'm an English student. I speak English. I learn in English. Nothing against Afrikaans, but just what are you going to persuade me to do to vote for you?
So, only thing we stand for is equal rights and equal opportunities for Afrikaans and English on this campus. It should be equal opportunities for all.
Bernard is keen to present himself as an inclusive candidate, but there's still a perception amongst many here that he's trying to preserve the privilege of white students.
Hi, you said you represent every single student in Stellenbosch, but there are so many students that prefer only English, prefer only Afrikaans. How would you go by every single student's opinion and thought if you represent that?
I can't shy away from the fact that half of them spoken Afrikaans to everyone here. And I'm not Afrikaans, so I don't know what they said, so they're almost basically losing my vote. And knowing that you guys are from Afriforum as well, it kind of makes me question what you guys stand for and how you're going to represent me as a student.
We're standing as SRC candidates representing the students. We will represent you. We are not there as, only for certain groups. We are from Afriforum, but we will represent all of the students.
The students in this room are part of a generation of so-called born-freers. Young South Africans who were born and grew up after apartheid ended in 1994. But Bernard's campaign, like all politics here, isn't happening in a vacuum. Everyone here is living in the shadow of decades of racial segregation. Do you think white Afrikaners are still being punished because they're associated with apartheid?
Definitely, without a question, yeah. But you have to acknowledge the fact that I am privileged as a white male living in this country with parents that have been through apartheid and been privileged. It's not that way for everyone, but it was that way for the majority of white South Africans. I've had the privilege of having TV, of having books. Someone in a squatters camp who's had nothing but bricks and a soccer ball to play with, they don't have that kind of privilege. It's not my fault, so I shouldn't feel guilty, but I realize there's a misbalance and a problem in the country, so I'm going to do something about it.
Just up the road from Stellenbosch is the Taal Monument, built to celebrate what was hoped to be the exponential growth of the Afrikaans language. This is one of the few monuments to a language anywhere in the world. It was created in 1975 when White Afrikaners were at the height of their power. Obviously though, things have changed quite a bit since then. Apartheid ensured the ruling white minority held on to their privileges. The Constitution of the New South Africa aims to protect the rights of all South Africans, regardless of race. But corruption, high crime, and soaring unemployment are blighting the country. And while white South Africans are statistically less likely to be victims of crime or unemployment than black citizens, there are plenty of Afrikaners who say the new South Africa is against them. I head north to the country's administrative capital, Pretoria, to meet an unlikely champion of Afrikaner rights. He's a singer, activist, actor, and he most definitely does not feel the need to apologise for his identity. Quite the opposite, actually. Steve Hofmeyr is one of the best-selling music artists in South Africa. But it's his public statements, claiming Afrikaners are being marginalised in post-apartheid South Africa, that make him a hero in the eyes of many of his fans. This place feels a bit more like I'm in Texas than I am in South Africa. This cowboy hat, and out of the kind of 650 guests that are here, I am pretty much the darkest one. Backstage, I want to find out why he's become so disillusioned with the new South Africa.
The Nelson Mandela idea, I thought it was good, it was practical.
So his idea of like a rainbow nation.
Of a rainbow nation. It was an experiment, and I think they all admitted that. But what kicked in was a strange sense of entitlement, and it has escalated ever since. And today, 21 years later, I don't recognize the ideal, I don't recognize the country, and I recognize only half of the people. It's crazy.
Do you think white people rule countries better than black people?
Yeah, I do think so. It's a tough thing to say because I think these systems were invented by white people and it's a white legacy. Can we leave that legacy or heritage in the hands of all the black governments? I'm not sure if they're doing very well. I'm not the racist who says that black or other colors can't do things. I'm not that racist. I believe in the potential of all groups. I certainly believe that certain groups did not come to the party. And I'm actually just a pop star, by the way. You know, we shouldn't be believed anything we say, by the way. But I have been working in my community for 30 years. I live with my ear on their sternum, and I feel their heartbeat. And when they laugh, I laugh, and when they cry, I cry, and they are crying.
The country in general, the economy is not doing as well as it could. So as a consequence, all races are doing worse. No?
Is nosediving as far as the rest of the world is concerned. This is one horrific economy. It's almost a ship you can't turn around
I know,
anymore.
but the consequence of that means that not just white people are suffering. All races are suffering. Therefore, you are in a collective struggle.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. I've made my campaign my people.
Hofmeyr's people, those here tonight anyway, seem grateful for the support.
No one has got the guts to stand up for Afrikaans.
Except
but Steve does. Why do you think the place is packed?
The place is, it's pretty much entirely white though, isn't it?
Nah, that's true, that's true.
Why do you think that is?
It's Afrikaans, huh? There's a couple of people that I know that love Steve, that's black.
What do you like about his kind of political views?
Excellent. Yeah, he's open-minded, he's open-minded.
Some would say he's not so open-minded.
No, he is.
Because he seems to be very positive about the Afrikaans community, but then other communities.
Why? Because it's the only guy who's standing up for our Afrikaans people.
Do Afrikaans people need standing up for?
I think so. I think so.
That's our language and our land, and that's what it's all about.
The most remarkable moment of the evening is Hofmeyr's showstopper, his rendition of South Africa's apartheid-era national anthem. To many South Africans, this song represents an old country they're ashamed of, but not the people in this room.
Ons sal sterk, ons vir jou Suid-Afrika.
Are some of the things Steve Hofmeyr says racist? And does he exaggerate the facts? To many people, the answer is yes. But to a lot of people in there and thousands around the country, he is pretty much the only person standing up for them. To try to better understand what's going on in the Afrikaner community, I've come to the University of Pretoria's sociology department. So this is where it happened?
Yes, yes. We basically had students coming down that corridor there.
I'm meeting Professor Christy van der Westhuizen. The campus here was the scene of some of the angriest clashes earlier this year over the use of Afrikaans in university classrooms.
Incredibly tumultuous kind of explosion of movement and students running.
Christy has written extensively on the role and identity of her fellow Afrikaners in South Africa. For her, the recent protests over the Afrikaans language have brought into focus a wider insecurity.
I think that it's very unpleasant to be in a position of power and privilege for centuries, and then for that position of power and privilege to be basically confronted and with the argument that it should be dismantled. People don't like giving up power. You know, white people don't like giving up power, men don't like giving up power, heterosexuals don't like giving up power. Who wants to give up power? It's not a comfortable space to be in.
Has life got worse for the white Afrikaner?
We do see a larger group of poor white people. They now number around about 45,000 people out of your 4.5 million white people in South Africa. But these are now white people living under the breadline. There are 27 million people in South Africa living under the breadline. If you look at the unemployment rate as well, between 5 and 7% for white people, it's 27% for the population as a whole.
Some white Afrikaners would argue that a system of reverse racism is now taking place in South Africa. Is that the case?
We have a system of what we call employment equity, and we've got a system of black economic empowerment. Why it is different to the discrimination of apartheid is because during apartheid, differences were used to actually take away life opportunities from people. Employment equity, affirmative action, whatever you want to call it, does not take away any opportunities from white people. What it basically is doing is it's trying to enhance the availability of opportunities to all people.
Post-apartheid, one of the aims was to have a raceless society. Can that be achieved by having policies that are directly aimed at people's race?
So the fact of the matter is, for me, it's impossible to move to a society where we can let go of race, you know, until we've actually rectified those injustices that are based on race.
The final stop on my journey is the very heart of South Africa's vast interior. This is wild country, sparsely populated and the world away from city life. It's quite obvious that there are plenty of white Afrikaners who are pretty pessimistic about their future in this country. But to some of them, it's much worse than that. There's a group who are actively preparing for the moment that South African society falls apart and there'll be no one left to protect white Afrikaners. And I'm about to meet them. Hello. Hey Gustav, nice to meet you. I'm Ben. These are the Sitelanders, Southerners in Afrikaans. They claim a membership of 20,000. But even if those numbers are correct, they've remained very much a fringe group. So this wouldn't be the best time to say I'm a vegetarian?
Are you?
No. The Sitelanders believe South Africa's high crime and poverty levels are indicators that the country is about to collapse. I see the world's biggest sausage.
Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely ginormous.
Well, you'll taste it, it's lovely.
Kuni Murray is the group's head of emergency planning.
You're going to have a situation where races turn on each other. That's going to flow out of instability. You already have close to 20 million people that's living off grants. You know what they look like 2 months after you get a situation of instability in this country. There's no income, there's nothing to eat. So obviously they're going to go to the better living areas.
Who are the whites, basically?
Which is the whites. And you're going to have conflict. then obviously the first thing that's going to happen is a lot of people is going to go out of cities. That's what happens everywhere. If you look at Syria and Libya, and that's always the same story. Because when people start running, they run without anything.
The Sitelanders have drawn up plans for white refugee camps. They think the breakdown of law and order will lead to whites fleeing cities, something they believe is inevitable. So do you think in general, black and white people in this country don't really like each other?
In general, no, definitely not. It's not about not liking them. It's about being with your own. When I have a braai like this, I invite people that speak like me, think like me. That's what we all do.
Cooney takes me to meet another Sitelander to show me the extent of the group's planning. Geert Botha is one of a network of people who have prepared trucks full of emergency supplies.
This is like showers and stuff, and frying pans, and also more food.
It's just blankets.
There's blankets.
Keep you.
There's also medical equipment, so the basic stuff is in here that you will need to survive.
The Sitelanders think anarchy isn't just inevitable, it's imminent. Surely it must mean you're constantly thinking about negative things, like the world supposedly ending. Like if you're with your kids, you suddenly get a thought and you're like, oh no, the world could potentially end tomorrow, society could fall. Is that not quite upsetting?
It's upsetting, but you must always keep that in mind, so you never can slip on that one. Because if you're going to relax, then they can catch you on the back foot, you know.
So you have to constantly be thinking about this stuff to make sure you survive?
You need to, yeah. It's a survival instinct to carry on with. No other way.
It's impossible to know how many of South Africa's 4.5 million white people might share the Sitelanders' bleak outlook. It's certainly not mainstream. But even if their predictions are wrong, they are a group of white South Africans who clearly see no future for themselves in this country. This has been my first time in South Africa. I think the most surprising thing has been just how real and raw racial tension still is in the country, 20 odd years on from apartheid. It's clear a lot of people here are trying to find out where they belong in South Africa today. And that's particularly true amongst the white Afrikaner community, who are caught between a history that demonizes them and a future that some are not just unsure of, but are even quite fearful of.